Okay, so I never really told many people about this because for years I thought maybe I'd imagined it or blown it out of proportion. But after talking to my old camp friend Jess on Facebook last month and finding out she remembers it exactly the same way, I figured I'd finally share what happened at Camp Evergreen back in summer 2004. I was 13, kind of a chubby, awkward kid, and this was my third year at this camp in northern Wisconsin. It was one of those traditional summer camps with cabins, a lake, campfires, the whole deal. My parents sent me every year for 3 weeks in July, probably just to get a break for me if I'm being honest. Our cabin was at the edge of the camp property. Me and 7 other girls plus our counselor, Sarah, who was maybe 19 or 20. Sarah was cool, but definitely not the most responsible counselor. She'd sneak off after lights out to meet her boyfriend who worked in the boys section, leaving us alone most nights, which was against the rules, but we didn't care. The first week was totally normal. Swimming, crafts, campfire songs, all that cheesy stuff. The second week is when the weird shit started. Tuesday night, we were all asleep when this absolutely insane thunderstorm hit around 2 a.m. I mean, biblical. Lightning hitting so close the windows were rattling, thunder that felt like it was inside your chest. Everyone woke up freaking out. Sarah wasn't there, shocker. So Jess, who was the oldest in our cabin at almost 14, tried to calm everyone down. That's when we heard it, a loud thunk on the outside wall of our cabin. Then another. Thunk. Thunk. At first we thought it was branches hitting the cabin or something, but the sound was too regular, too deliberate. Mackenzie, the super tall girl with braces, went to the window, and I remember her face just going completely white. "There's someone out there," she whispered. "A man with an axe." Obviously, we thought she was messing with us. Like, half the girls started calling her a liar and stuff. But she wouldn't budge from the window. "He's chopping something on that big stump by the path," she insisted. Jess and I went to look, and holy shit, she wasn't making it up. Through the rain and the darkness, we could see this tall figure about 30 feet from our cabin. The lightning would flash and we'd catch glimpses of him, dark rain gear, hood up, and definitely swinging what looked like an axe or hatchet, bringing it down over and over on this old tree stump we used as a gathering spot. We were freaking the hell out. This was pre-cell phones for kids, or at least my parents didn't let me have one yet. And the emergency phone was in the main lodge across camp. Sarah was nowhere to be found. We were basically trapped. "He's coming closer," Mackenzie suddenly said. And sure enough, the figure had stopped chopping and was now walking slowly toward our cabin. We all ran to our bunks and just hid under blankets like that would do anything. I was in a top bunk and I remember pressing myself against the wall, trying not to cry. The cabin had a little porch, and we heard the steps creak as someone walked up them. Then the door handle jiggled, back and forth, like someone trying to open it. Thank God we had locked it after Sarah left. "Girls, you okay in there?" It was a man's voice, deep and kind of raspy. None of us answered. We were literally paralyzed with fear. "I'm Hank, from maintenance, just checking all the cabins in the storm. There's a tree down on the main path." The voice paused. "You girls alone in there? Where's your counselor?" Still, nobody answered. The handle jiggled again, harder this time. "You need to let me in to check for weeks." "Director's orders." That's when Dress, who had somehow kept her shit together, called out, "Our counselor is in the bathroom." "She'll be right out." She said, "We don't need any help. Thank you." There was this long pause, the longest 10 seconds of my life. "All right then, I'll come back in the morning." The voice didn't sound happy. We heard footsteps going down the porch steps and fading away. None of us slept a wink the rest of the night. We just huddled together in the center of the cabin floor, jumping at every thunder crack. Sarah finally came back around 5 a.m., soaking wet and annoyed that we were all up. When we told her about the maintenance man, her face changed. "What maintenance man? Hank? Hank retired like 3 years ago." That morning at breakfast, we reported everything to the camp director. They did a full search of the grounds, but didn't find anyone. They told us it was probably just one of the counselors playing a prank, but they moved our entire cabin to one closer to the main lodge, just to be safe. The really creepy part came 2 days later. The camp ranger found fresh cuts on the back wall of our old cabin, like someone had been trying to chop their way in with an axe. The cuts were hidden under a window, where they wouldn't be easily noticed. They called the police, but nothing ever came of it. The camp told our parents it was storm damage to avoid panic, but all us girls knew the truth. Here's the part that still keeps me up some nights. The last day of camp, when my dad was driving me home, we stopped at this gas station about 20 miles from camp. While my dad was paying, I saw this older guy with a scraggly beard watching me from across the parking lot. He was wearing work clothes and loading what looked like landscaping equipment into a beat-up truck. When he saw me notice him, he smiled and raised his hand in a little wave. Then he made a chopping motion, like he was swinging an axe. I ran back to our car and locked the doors. By the time my dad came out, the man and his truck were gone. I never told my parents. I honestly thought maybe I was just traumatized and seeing things. But last month, Jess messages me out of nowhere on Facebook saying, "Do you remember that night at Camp Evergreen? With the Axe Man?" She still thinks about it too. We found out through some internet searching that 3 years after our experience, Camp Evergreen permanently closed following an incident with a maintenance worker. The articles are vague, but apparently he had been squatting in a hidden space beneath one of the unused cabins. Our old cabin. I have a daughter now who's almost old enough for summer camp. My husband thinks I'm overprotective when I say I'm not comfortable sending her. If he only knew.
This is the sound that still haunts my dreams. A mother's scream at 3 a.m. in the New Forest. And the worst part, we didn't know her daughter was dying just 800 yards from our tent until the police showed up at dawn. I tried to forget that weekend. Really have. It's been almost 4 years now, but sometimes when I'm half asleep, I still hear that scream echoing through the trees. My therapist says writing this down might help. So here goes nothing. I was 19 when my best mate Dave convinced me to go camping in the New Forest. Typical lad's trip, beers, barbecue, and Dave trying to impress some girl from his work named Kayla. She was bringing her friend Megan, and Dave thought we'd hit it off. We didn't even mind that another girl, Laura, and her boyfriend Chris were coming too. That should have been the drama of the weekend. We arrived Friday afternoon. 6 of us crammed into 3 cars, with enough beer to drown a small village, and enough snacks to feed one. The campsite was this family-friendly place, with proper toilets, and those little wooden platforms for tents. Nothing too wild. You could still see other campers through the trees, but each spot felt private enough. The first night was exactly what you'd expect. We got the tents up, well, everyone except Dave did. Poor bastard was hopeless. Spent an hour trying to figure out which pole went where, while we all took the piss. His tent ended up looking like a deflated balloon with a person trapped inside. Classic Dave. "Nate, you're going to freeze your ass off in that thing," I told him, laughing as one of the sides caved in again. "Piss off," he mumbled, hammering a tent peg with the bottom of a beer bottle. "At least I'm not sleeping in my car, like some antisocial weirdo." He had me there. I'd claimed back pain from the drive as an excuse to sleep in my Honda Civic. Truth was, I just hated the feeling of being trapped in a tent. Something about the way the fabric presses down on you in the middle of the night gives me the creeps. Thank God I made that choice though. That first night was normal enough. We built a fire, cooked some burgers on a little portable BBQ grill, drank until everything was funny. Kayla kept laughing at Dave's terrible jokes, so that was going well for him. Laura and her new bloke were all over each other, which was annoying, but whatever. I just kept drinking until I didn't care anymore. The second day, we hiked around the forest, saw some wild ponies, normal tourist stuff. The weather was perfect, sunny, but not too hot. We even befriended this family in the campsite next to ours. Older couple with their daughter and son-in-law and their little girl. Couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. Cute kid with pigtails, obsessed with Dora the Explorer. Had the sleeping bag, the backpack, the whole works. She showed us her collection of pine cones. That second night was when things started getting off. Nothing major, just a weird vibe. We were sitting around our fire when this red-faced woman from across the way came storming over, accusing us of being too loud. "Some of us have children trying to sleep," she hissed, pointing at our speaker that was barely audible over the crackling fire. We apologized, turned it down. No big deal. But then she stood there, arms crossed, glaring at us like we'd committed some terrible crime. "Is there something else?" Dave asked, clearly irritated. "Just keep it down," she snapped. "And stop revving your engines at all hours." We all looked at each other, confused. "No one's been driving around," I said. "We've been here all day." She just scoffed and walked away, muttering something about irresponsible kids. "What the hell was that about?" Megan asked once she was gone. We shrugged it off, assumed she was just one of those people who hate young folks having fun. But it bothered me. I hadn't heard any cars driving around the campsite either. Then Sunday morning happened. I was half asleep in my car when this red-faced bloke starts banging on my window, screaming at me about speeding around the campsite at midnight. But when we both touched my car hood, stone cold. That's when I realized something much worse was happening down that tree-lined lane. I nearly shit myself when the banging started. This guy was proper fuming. Red face, veins popping out of his neck, the works. Must have been about 7 a.m. "You think it's funny, do you?" He was shouting through the glass. "Revving your engine all night? There are families here, for Christ's sake." I climbed out, still half asleep and confused. "Mate, I haven't moved my car since we got here Friday." "Bullshit," he spat. "Everyone heard it. Engine revving up and down that lane all bloody night." I placed my hand on my hood. "Feel that? Stone cold. If I'd been driving it all night, it'd be warm." He hesitated, then put his palm on the metal. His face changed immediately. Confusion replaced the anger. "But we all heard it," he said, quieter now. "Engines, all night, coming from this direction." That's when a park ranger's truck pulled up. The ranger, this tall bloke with a serious expression, asked us both to step away from the vehicle. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, but something in his tone made my stomach drop. He wasn't asking about our argument. "This gentleman thinks I was driving around last night," I explained. "But I wasn't." The ranger nodded slightly. "No one was. The gates were locked at 10 p.m. as usual." He looked between us, then sighed. "We need everyone to return to their campsites for now. There's been an incident." My argument buddy went pale. "What kind of incident?" The ranger just repeated. "Please return to your campsites. The police will be around shortly to take statements." We both stood there, watching him walk away to speak to another group of campers. "Sorry, mate," the guy mumbled. "About the accusation." I barely heard him. My mind was racing. Police, statements. My first thought was that someone had been hurt, maybe a hiking accident. I hurried back to our campsite to wake the others. Everyone was already awake when I got back, all looking confused and on edge. Apparently, rangers had been by, telling everyone to stay put. Through the trees, we could see police vehicles arriving, their blue lights flashing silently. "What the hell is going on?" Dave asked, looking unusually sober. "No idea," I said. "But that angry red-faced lady from last night, her husband just accused me of driving around the campsite all night, revving my engine." Laura frowned. "That's weird. I heard car engines too, around 2 or 3 a.m. Thought it was just someone arriving late." "Me too," said Kyla. "Sounded like someone was having trouble with their car. Kept starting and stopping. An uneasy feeling settled over me. If it wasn't my car, and the gates were locked." That's when we noticed the family next door, the ones with the little girl, were gone. Their tent was still there, a cheerful blue dome with Dora stickers on the outside, but no sign of the people. As the morning wore on, the campsite grew increasingly tense. Police officers in uniform moved from site to site, asking the same questions. Did you hear anything unusual last night? Did you see anyone moving around after midnight? Did you notice any vehicles? That night, we were all too unsettled to really enjoy ourselves. The campground was eerily quiet. No music, no laughing, just hushed conversations and the occasional sound of a tent zipper. The police had left, but told us all to stay another night for follow-up questions in the morning. We made a small fire, cooked some food on the barbecue. The whole campground smelled like charcoal and cheap wine as people tried to salvage their weekend. At 1 a.m., I climbed into my car, leaving the window cracked for air. That's when the screaming started. Not human, not animal. Some unholy sound that made my testicles crawl up inside me. A raw, guttural wail that silenced the entire forest. Then again, and again. 3 times it came, each one making the hair on my arms stand up. I locked my doors so fast, I nearly broke the handle. Through the trees, I saw torch beams sweeping. People were coming out of their tents, confused and frightened. Then came the helicopter, its searchlight cutting through the darkness. Police radios crackling as more officers arrived. None of us slept after that. We huddled around our dying fire, jumping at every sound until dawn broke. As the first light filtered through the trees, we could see the police had cordoned off an area down a small dirt track about 800 yards from our site. They wouldn't let anyone leave until we gave statements. The officer interviewing me kept saying, "Tragic accident," like that explained anything. His face was grim, but professional. The face of someone who's seen horrible things, but has to maintain composure. "And you didn't see anyone moving around your campsite during the night?" He asked for the 3rd time. "No," I repeated. "Just heard what sounded like car engines, but apparently it wasn't cars." He nodded, made a note. "And the screaming, what time did you hear that?" "Around 1 a.m. But that wasn't coming from nearby. That sounded like it was coming from the main office area." Another nod, another note. Then he closed his notebook and thanked me for my time. We found out later from the news. A family brought their 6-year-old to celebrate Grandma's birthday. The same little girl with the Dora sleeping bag, who'd shown us her pine cones. The night had gotten chilly. The mum thought putting the used barbecue inside the tent would keep them warm. Just a little one, almost out. What could it hurt? Carbon monoxide doesn't smell. It doesn't taste. You can't see it. It doesn't wake you up either. It lulls you deeper into sleep, until you just don't wake up again. The grandparents had gone to the toilet block around midnight. When they returned, everyone in the tent seemed asleep. It wasn't until early morning, when the grandmother tried to wake her daughter for breakfast, that she realized something was terribly wrong. The mother and father were barely alive, unconscious, breathing shallow. They were rushed to hospital in critical condition. The little girl hadn't made it. The worst part, that scream. Because now I know, that was the sound of a grandmother finding her grandbaby Blue, and still in a Dora the Explorer sleeping bag. The car engines people heard. The family had brought a little portable generator for their electric coal box. As the tent filled with carbon monoxide, it started to run rough, sputtering and stalling as it sucked in the toxic air. I've always wondered, if someone had investigated those strange engine sounds, could that little girl have been saved? I still go camping, but I always check the wind direction twice. And I never, ever have a barbecue anywhere near my sleeping area. I keep the windows cracked in my tent, no matter how cold it gets. And some nights, I still wake up in a cold sweat, hearing that grandmother's scream echo through the trees. It wasn't just grief in that sound. It was guilt. Pure, devastating guilt that will follow that woman to her grave. A guilt that haunts me too, in a smaller way, because we all heard those engines struggling, and not one of us went to check.
So, this happened to me about 3 years ago, and I still get chills thinking about it. I've only told a few close friends, but maybe writing it out will help me process it better. I'm a pretty experienced hiker, been doing solo backpacking trips since college. Nothing extreme, just weekend stuff in national parks, usually 2 to 3 nights max. This particular trip was in the Adirondacks, on a trail system I'd never been on before, but had researched pretty thoroughly. Day 1 went perfectly normal. Weather was great, trail was marked well, I was making good time. I had planned to camp at this designated backcountry site about 8 miles in. Got there around 4 p.m., set up my tent, filtered some water from the nearby stream, made dinner, normal camping stuff. The site was nice. Small clearing surrounded by thick pine trees, flat spot for my tent, even had one of those little stone fire rings. I didn't see anyone else all day, which wasn't surprising since it was a Tuesday in October. Off-season, just how I like it. I remember sitting by my little fire that night, just enjoying the quiet, when I first got that weird feeling. You know that sensation when you know someone is watching you? Like the hair on your neck stands up? Yeah, that. I looked around, shined my headlamp into the trees, didn't see anything. Figured it was just a deer or something, went to bed around 10 p.m. I'm usually a solid sleeper outdoors, but that night, I kept waking up to these sounds. Not animal sounds. Not quite human either. Just these weird shuffling noises, circling my tent, like someone dragging their feet through leaves, but really slowly and deliberate, then stopping, then starting again from a different direction. At one point, I sat up and yelled, "Hello, is someone there?" Nothing, just dead silence. Not even normal forest night sounds. That's when I realized all the insects and frogs had gone quiet. Not a good sign in the woods. I didn't sleep much after that. When morning came, I was so relieved to see daylight. I got out of my tent and immediately noticed something odd. There was a perfect circle of pine cones placed around my tent, maybe 10 feet out in every direction. I'm talking perfect circle, each pine cone exactly the same distance from the next. There had to be at least 50 of them. I told myself it was probably just some weird coincidence, or maybe some animal behavior I didn't understand. But deep down, I knew better. The really unsettling part? No footprints anywhere near them. The ground was soft from some rain the previous day, and I could clearly see my footprints going to and from the tent. But nothing else disturbed the dirt. I decided right then I wasn't staying another night. Packed up quickly and hit the trail back. The hike out should have taken about 6 hours, following the same trail I came in on. I hiked for 9 hours and never found the trailhead. I'm not exaggerating. I followed the markers perfectly. Blue blazes every 50 yards or so. Consistent trail underfoot. But I kept going, and nothing looked familiar. The terrain should have been getting easier as I approached the parking area, but instead it was getting rougher, with more elevation changes than I remembered. Around 4 p.m., I started getting really worried about daylight. I checked my map for the millionth time, convinced myself I had somehow taken a wrong turn, though I couldn't figure out where. The trail I was on wasn't even on my map anymore. That's when I saw the backpack, just sitting beside the trail. A red North Face pack, pretty new looking, nobody around. I called out, thinking maybe someone had set it down to take a break, go to the bathroom, whatever. No answer. I walked over to it, thinking maybe there'd be ID or something. That's when I noticed the pine cones. 7 of them, arranged in a small circle around the pack. My blood went cold. I backed away and kept hiking, moving faster now. The sun was getting low, and I was starting to panic a little. I still had my tent if I needed to spend another night, but the thought of being out there in the dark again was terrifying. About an hour later, I came across a clearing that stopped me in my tracks. There was a campsite with a stone fire ring, my campsite from the night before. Somehow I'd hiked in a massive circle all day. That's when I lost it. I sat down and almost cried from frustration and fear. I knew I'd followed the trailblazers. There was no way I could have gone in a circle. I got my compass out, determined to just head due east, no matter what. The main road had to be that way. That's when I noticed my compass was going crazy. the needle just spinning around and around. With no other options, I started following the blazes again, paying obsessive attention to each one. That's when I noticed something I had missed before. The blazes weren't all the same shade of blue. Some were slightly darker than others. On a hunch, I started following only the lighter blue ones, ignoring the darker ones when the trail forked. Within an hour, I found the trailhead. My car was right where I'd left it, looking completely normal. I've never been so happy to see my crappy old Honda. Here's the part that still freaks me out to this day. When I got home and unpacked, I found a single pine cone in the bottom of my pack. I never put it there. And when I broke it open out of curiosity, there was a tiny scrap of paper inside. On it, in tiny handwriting, were the words, "You found your way out." Most don't. I've tried researching if anyone else has had weird experiences on that trail. Found a few vague mentions of hikers feeling disoriented or losing time in that area, but nothing specific. I haven't gone solo hiking since then, and I definitely never camp anywhere near pine cones anymore.